It was nearly Christmas, and it was a time of war. A colossal conflict had flared up the previous year when troops from a powerful nation rolled over their neighbor's border on Christmas Day, dramatically breaking the peace of Europe with a lightning round invasion. They were initially confident of a quick victory, but after almost one full year of industrialized warfare, any momentum at the front had been lost as the contending armies became bogged down in a bloody trench-line stalemate. Cities were in ruins, thousands of civilians were dead under the rubble, and thousands more were made into refugees. Haunting images of human suffering were constantly flashing across mobile phone screens all over the world. The brutal European war got most of the media attention because of its scale and high body count, but civil wars, wars between small nations, and wars against separatist guerrillas were raging across the globe at the same time. Most of these smaller hot wars were proxy conflicts for several overlapping Cold Wars, and the major powers poured in weapons, money, spies, and military advisors. So far, the nuclear-armed nations had avoided direct confrontation, but the possibility that tensions would escalate to nuclear war seemed more likely every day. The global economy was in shambles. Political polarization and mass discontent were on the rise. The acute sense of general crisis made the idea of the end of the world a frequent and respectable topic of discussion. There was one man who followed the news with relish, however, seeing in a world at war a landscape of opportunity. He refused to go by his given name, but would answer only to Octavian. His only ambition in life was to become the emperor of an officially re-established Roman Empire, ruling over the entire world. He wasn't naive to how colossal the task he had set for himself was, but he had supreme confidence in his own abilities, and knew, above all, that fortune favors the bold. Unfortunately for the aspiring emperor, he was currently 15 years old and living with his parents, severely limiting his ability to act, boldly or otherwise. To his chagrin, he was required to attend public school with the rest of the plebeian rabble. Instead of plotting intrigues to restore a lost empire, the scrawny kid with wavy brown hair and glasses found himself standing in a conventional high school classroom, giving a presentation about current events to a room full of peers he had absolutely no intellectual respect for. To him, their ambitions were tiny and self-serving. Their interests were provincial and petty. Their slang was crude and unlovely. The pop culture they enjoyed so much was decadent and shallow, and they utterly lacked the disciplined mental fortitude of true Romans. Going to school with regular modern-day kids had made Octavian realize just how far the world had fallen into decline since the fall of Rome. Whenever he would reflect on the difference between himself and the rest of his generation, he was reminded of a quote by Edward Gibbon about Majorian, one of the last Western Roman emperors, a great ruler who almost saved the Western Empire in the 5th century on the eve of its fall. Majorian presents a welcome discovery of a great and heroic character such as sometimes arise in a degenerate age to vindicate the honor of the human species. Octavian hoped that one day, if he managed to create a world that no longer produced degenerate knaves like the one sitting before him, a historian of the future would compose a similar line about his own reign. Nevertheless, his fellow students were a microcosm of the masses whose favor he'd have to court. He needed to be a sly son of a bitch like his namesake in order to place himself at the top of a burgeoning new Roman Empire. Today, though, he would be straightforward and blunt. He was trying out his pitch in public for the first time, and public speaking was a crucial skill for an emperor to master. The ability to long-windedly monologue before a captive audience invigorated him. He viewed it as a chance to practice his propaganda skills and gauge their reactions in real time. He could feel a vibe today, an energy that came from the dead-eyed faces of the students in class, an energy that gave him confidence. It was that very cattle-like moldability he could read in their faces that gave him hope his plan could really succeed. If he had an augur to read his fortune from a flight of birds, he had a feeling the auspices would be good. He would show them a vision they had never imagined possible and make them believe in it. If he could bend a classroom of peers to his will, perhaps he could bend a nation or a world. For this reason, he began his oral presentation by telling the class in somber tones about the recurring dream that inspired it all. He spoke in a deliberate, staccato manner, carefully choosing his words and placing emphasis on phrases he thought would carry the most dramatic punch. He vividly described the scenes that had haunted him since childhood. An ancient city with mighty walls, crumbling from cannon fire and breached by the enemy. A desperate charge, led by an emperor who would rather die than abandon its capital city, followed by a furious fight and an agonizing martyrdom. As he spoke, he observed their reactions. Some of the males seemed to be paying attention appreciatively, even one or two of the jocks he wouldn't normally expect to take him seriously. They at least seemed to think an emperor's heroic charge into eternity was a story worth listening to. That was to the good. As an emperor, he would have to make use of a whole lot of dumb brutes, and he needed to learn how to appeal to their sense of martial virtue. Some of these guys plan to join the military, and according to Septimius Severus, the soldiers are the only ones who really matter. Most of the class, though, just looked baffled. A few stared open-mouthed, giving Octavian the impression of turkeys staring up at the rain. The class, normally as cacophonously loud as a horde of Germanic barbarians, was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. The teacher was sitting at her desk with her face buried in her palms as Octavian narrated his tale, brimming with unusual confidence. Finally she sighed, looked up, and interrupted him. Octavian, please answer me. What this assignment was supposed to be about?" Octavian glanced at her with an irritated expression. Here he was, bearing his soul to a room full of ungrateful ingrates, and she wanted to talk about the technicalities of a school assignment. It was absurd. "Current events?" he answered. "Yes, current events. Like the gigantic war going on in Europe right now, for example. You may have noticed it. There are conflicts springing up all over the place. The whole world is on fire. I thought that as intelligent as you are, you'd appreciate an open opportunity to enlighten us with your perspective on serious issues. I expect you to have the most interesting presentation, and yet here you are telling us the contents of your dream diary? This assignment was not an invitation for you to talk about yourself, Octavian. Don't get me wrong, it was riveting stuff. You'd be a writer if you wanted. But what is the relevance of the actual assignment?" "I'm getting that, dear teacher," Octavian explained patiently. "I have to explain the dream to explain my destiny." "Destiny? Octavian, this is a history class." "Yes, and what better place to speak of destiny? The very force that drives history. I've got plans. Big plans. I shall fulfill my destiny by bringing back the Roman Empire. The dream I spoke of is a memory of my past life. I know it like I know that water is wet and the sky is blue. I was the last Roman emperor, Constantine the 11th, who was slain in battle defending Constantinople from the Turks 600 years ago. True, I went out like an absolute badass. But at the end of the day, the city went down under my watch. I failed the legacy of Rome and of all the Caesars who went before me. I have to make right what went wrong in my previous life. And I shall. I will bring back the Roman Empire. Rome in all its glory will live again." The entire classroom burst out laughing. Octavian could feel his face reddening. The teacher held up her hand to signal for quiet. "Now, class, don't be rude. Hush." The laughter gradually died down as people were finally able, one by one, to contain themselves. She looked at Octavian quizzically. "Hold on a minute. You said you're the reincarnation of the last emperor of Constantinople. I won't question anyone's belief as to whether that's even possible, but shouldn't you be trying to bring back the Byzantine Empire?" "Don't use that name," Octavian snapped irritably. "That's a false name invented by Western scholars in the Renaissance. The so-called Byzantine Empire was a legitimate continuation of the Eastern Roman Empire. Constantine the 11th died as a Roman emperor." "Okay, fine, if it matters to you so much. So why don't you call yourself Constantine then?" she asked. "Because when I was Constantine, in my past life, I was the last emperor of the East. I'm refounding the whole Roman Empire anew, so I took on the name of the first emperor as a sign of my dedication to that task," Octavian explained in a tone that suggested it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Right, so why not call yourself Romulus?" "Because I'm not founding a monarchy in a single city. I'm not like that monarchist freak you have next period. I'm trying to bring back Rome as a dream of universal empire. Universal order. That's my plan for world peace. A new Pax Romana with myself as the emperor, guiding the world as an enlightened despot. That, Miss Havelock, is how my dream relates to current affairs. You want me to talk about problems. Instead, I offer a solution. Just look at the world around you. As you yourself said, the world is on fire. What the world needs is water from a fire truck. And that fire truck is called Rome. And the person driving that fire truck will be me." The classroom erupted in laughter again, but this time the mirth was deeper and more sustained. Even Miss Havelock was chuckling, though she tried to fight it down by covering her mouth. Octavian was annoyed by the casual manner in which they dismissed a dream they could scarcely even understand. He had a low tolerance for mockery. It was better for an emperor to be feared instead of loved if he could not be both, and nothing undermines fear like laughter. The teacher at least should have had the grace to pretend to take him seriously. He was beginning to think that maybe his rhetorical technique had been off base, when suddenly the entire thought process died in an instant. He could hear the laughter, but it seemed distant, as if it was coming from another room. Octavian stood there with his own mouth gaping open like a turkey, because it seemed to him like the golfed version of Helen of Troy had just casually walked into the room. She stood in the doorway, dressed all in black, shirt, pants, combat boots, makeup, and fingernails. Her long hair was raven, flowing like a shadow around her face, framing her extremely pretty angular features. Her skin was pale as snow, her piercing eyes were blue as ice, and her lips were pursed in an expression of disapproval aimed squarely at him. He could feel his cheeks burning. He had no idea how long she had been standing there before he noticed her, but the timing of her entrance left a lot to be desired. Miss Havelock seemed to see her at the same time. "Everybody shut up!" she bellowed with the sudden vehemence of a drill instructor. Then, reverting back to her normal, friendly voice, she said, "I'm so sorry. I almost forgot. We're getting a new student today. Class, this is Lily Scrooge. She's 16 years old and she just moved to the area. My name is Miss Havelock. I would let you introduce yourself a little more, Lily, but you just walked in on a very interesting presentation by our resident history buff, Octavian. Please find a seat." "I'm sorry I'm late, Miss Havelock. I didn't mean to interrupt your resident megalomaniac, the fire truck driving fascist. I thought I'd heard it all," she said, smirking. Her voice was soft as satin, but her scorn was hard as nails. Octavian flinched as though he'd been physically struck. "Fascist?" he spat out indignantly. "That's just a buzzword. You want to become an authoritarian dictator and bring back the Roman Empire. That's literally what Mussolini, the inventor of capital F fascism, wanted to do, wasn't it?" she asked. "Maybe. I never thought about it that way," Octavian replied. "And what about slavery? The Roman Empire ran off a huge system of slave labor. Does bringing back the glory of Rome mean bringing back the glory of slavery?" asked Lily. "Yeah, what about slavery? I'm real interested in that too," asked the black student with unfriendly expression. No slavery. I'm bringing back the Roman Empire minus slavery," Octavian said. "You're not even Italian," said a kid with a black jacket, a greaser hairdo, and a heavy Brooklyn accent named Donnie. He pointed at Octavian accusingly. "I'm Italian. This is ridiculous. You're talking about betraying America, your own country. I love America. The Roman Empire is in my blood, and I say Rome had it today. We have freedom here. This is America." Angry mutterings of agreement passed like a spasm through the room. Octavian waited patiently for the room to quiet before continuing. "Rome is not about ethnicity. Rome is more like a state of mind. You say you have Roman in your blood. I'm Roman in my soul. But I can't forget that I was born in the USA. It's a nice foundation for expansion. I want to make America so powerful that it takes over the whole world in the process of becoming the new universal Roman Empire. So-called American freedom has become a joke. Are you really that free now just because you have a sham election process where you vote for your favorite oligarchical puppet? True freedom comes from security. And does anyone really stand secure these days? Look at all the conflict and instability in the world. Does any fastness seem so strong? Only a global empire can bring order to all this chaos, and no empire lasted so long as the Roman one. The Roman Empire has the truest imperial legitimacy in this world. With the modern technology we have at our fingertips, this time the Pax Romana will last forever. One emperor, one empire, one world, Octavian declaimed, hoping this passion would be contagious. "Hell yeah, go Rome! Long live the emperor!" said Matthew, the usual class clown, a guy with a wild shock of dirty blonde hair who would have probably considered the strangest person in class before today. "See, this guy gets it," said Octavian. He was thankful to have at least one supporter. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. The problem with the world is the capitalist system itself and the governments that serve it. That's why they're fighting these wars. That's why they treat real life like a PC strategy game. It's all about resources and market dominance. We have too many layers of tyrannical authority and too many bad incentive structures frozen into place. And that," she said as she strode forward, glaring at Octavian, "is what I intend to put it into. All of it." "Oh, great. Another kid with big plans," Miss Havelock complained. "That's insane," said Octavian. "I agree. The current world system is breaking down because the existing governmental structures are garbage, but that's because they're all broken up into competing nodes and networks of power. It's pure chaos. I would unite them all under the imperial banner of Rome. If you would oppose me, what do you offer instead? Anarchy? As if that would ever work." Octavian laughed. Matthew guffawed along with him. "Anarchism. There's a difference. Anarcho-communism specifically is why I plant my banner, and yes, it will quote-unquote work once the revolutionary masses have been activated by the vanguard party and the alternative non-hierarchical cooperative structures of self-organization have been put into place. Well, that was a word salad of an answer. I stopped paying attention when I heard the word communism, said Octavian. That's rich coming from the guy who fetishizes ancient Rome and makes grand proclamations about how he can take over the world. You think he'll use the system to found an empire, but that very system will use you instead, eat you alive, and spit you out if it even finds you useful, said Lily, signing as if she was amused at the prospect. Only a revolutionary vanguard party can bring the whole rotten edifice down. I wouldn't come to your vanguard party even if you invited me, Octavian said peevishly. You're not even smart enough to be in the vanguard party. Don't worry, said Lily. It sounds like you just want to build your own totalitarian system. Even if you do manage to take it over, you won't give up that power once you taste it, said Octavian. Lily rolled her eyes. I want a dictatorship of the proletariat. You just want a plain dictatorship. But even if it were true, I'd still have a better chance of tasting power than you. I want a dictatorship that actually makes sense, said Octavian. Your revolution will never get off the ground, you absolute moonbat. Your dictatorship is a pipe dream, you reactionary moron. Okay, that's enough, said Miss Havelock. Both of you simmer down. You don't argue about politics by name-calling. I'm sorry for my accurate labels. I just didn't realize the political spectrum around these parts reached so far down into the gutter, said Lily. I'm sure everything looks like the gutter from the point of view of an angel, Octavian blurted out, instantly regretting it. That's how you'd like to think of yourself, he added quickly. Some pure, righteous, perfect, revolutionary angel looking down at us all, tisking as you strum your harp strings, not realizing your wings are glued on like Icarus. Okay, enough, said Miss Havelock. This has turned into a spicy debate, but you're both scholars here, and we don't eat things that get so heated the sparks set the room on fire. It's clear you kids have been thinking about these issues long and hard. I'm sad, actually glad, to say, though, that neither one of you may end up getting what you want. The current events in question have changed. She held up her phone and pointed to an article. The world's major powers are going to a peace conference hosted by Santa Claus. He's offered to help negotiate a new world order. What? Cried Octavian and Lily in unison, turning away from glaring at each other to look at her in utter shock and surprise. The teacher frowned. You act like this is a bad thing. Santa Claus is back, after all this time, and what he's chosen to do is try to bring peace when the world is on the brink. We should count our lucky stars. If half of what he's been saying is true, he's truly going to make the world a better place. You two might end up not having to overthrow anything. Isn't that something you want? Not now, said Octavian. I mean, yes, eventually, on my own terms. Chaos is a staircase, as I once heard someone say. The teacher looked at him with an expression of astonishment. She looked at Lily, who shrugged. Not like this. Not if it's just putting back into place the very power structures that need to be overthrown to prevent the same thing from happening again. Not without revolution. Besides, something doesn't feel right. Miss Havelock sighed. Don't you see we'll have a nuclear war if things keep going this way? Actually, now that I come to think of it, no more presentations. Forget about current events. It's much more important to concern yourself with down-to-earth things and big world affairs. Now, please, have a seat and we'll move on with our day. Now, to bring you up to speed, Lily, and as a reminder to everyone else, the thing you need to understand about the 30 Years' War is... She went on like that, cheerfully educating the class about 3 decades of bloodshed and horror in a chippy voice, while Octavian and Lily mouthed curses at each other under their breath, or made rude hand signs as covertly as they could.